Welcome to the Deep Dive. You're here because you want to get smart fast. And today, we're doing exactly that.
We are. We're jumping into a really pivotal time for the early church.
Yeah, specifically the Revelations in Doctrine and Covenants, sections 46, 47, and 48. Think of it like a crash course in some core ideas revealed during this period of massive growth.
Yeah, massive is right. You got to picture Kirtland back then, over 100 new converts, tons of enthusiasm, but really not many established resources.
Right, like what do they even have? Instructions? Scriptures?
Barely. Not enough copies of the Book of Mormon to go around, no formal lesson plans. Just a lot of faith, really, and probably a lot of questions.
Okay, so it's like trying to build something huge with loads of energy, but maybe not all the blueprints yet.
Exactly. And a lot of these new members were fired up by the New Testament, thinking about the spiritual gifts Paul mentions in 1 Corinthians.
Okay, so they were expecting to see similar things, healings, prophecies, that sort of stuff.
Pretty much, which naturally brings up a big question.
Yeah.
How do you tell what's a real manifestation of the Spirit and what's, well, maybe just excitement or something else?
Yeah, and that kind of high-energy environment, figuring that out seems crucial, like right away.
Definitely.
So that's kind of our jumping-off point for this deep dive. We want to tackle some questions that came up then, but honestly, they still feel pretty relevant today.
They really do.
Especially for listeners who, like digging deep and finding those maybe less obvious connections. So first, how did the early leaders even start to manage this? This huge influx of people with so few established guides.
Yeah, the logistics alone sound daunting. And then what about those spiritual gifts? What specific guidance did they get? How are they supposed to understand what they were for and recognize the real deal?
Right, especially with that New Testament background, setting expectations. What were the actual instructions? And another thing, why was keeping a church history considered so vital, like right from the beginning? It seems like they had more pressing day-to-day survival things to worry about.
It does seem like a big ask early on. And then finally, just the practical stuff. How did they handle welcoming all the newcomers pouring in? And, sharing the very limited resources they actually had.
Okay, so that gives us a good roadmap. To tackle this, we've pulled together some key sources. We're looking at the Come Follow Me manual covering these sections.
It's an historical background on that early Kirtland period.
And, of course, the actual scriptures, Doctrine and Covenants 46 to 48, to see the revelations themselves.
Sounds good.
All right, let's get into it. Section 46. This seems like it directly addresses those initial questions about spiritual experiences, doesn't it?
It really does. It tackles that eagerness, that desire for these marvelous manifestations head on.
And it starts with Joseph Smith praying about this very issue, right? Because there was maybe some confusion, some things happening that weren't quite right.
Exactly. And the Lord's answer, it gives a really solid foundation for understanding these gifts.
Yeah, verse 9 is pretty direct. It says these gifts are real, they're purposeful, and they're given for the benefit of those who love him and keep all his commandments, and him that seeketh so to do.
Which immediately ties it to sincerity and discipleship, not just, wanting a spiritual spectacle.
Right. But what I find interesting is where the Lord starts before even detailing the gifts.
Yeah. Yes. The welcoming part. Verses 1 through 7. It's all about making sure meetings are open, that anyone who comes sincerely is welcome.
It's like step one is basic human decency and community building.
Yeah.
The sources even ask us to think about that. Do visitors feel welcome in our church meetings? What can we actually do to make things more inviting?
It's such a key point. Almost like you can't have the higher spiritual gifts flourish if the ground isn't prepared with genuine fellowship and welcome. It echoes verses in 2 Nephi and 3 Nephi about Christ's arms being open to all.
That makes total sense. I remember walking into a new congregation once feeling totally out of place, and just someone saying, "Hi, glad you're here," made a world of difference. It lowered the anxiety,
Yeah.
Made me feel like I could actually participate.
Those small things matter hugely. They create the space for the Spirit. Okay, so then the section gets into the gifts themselves, verses 7 to 33.
And the key phrase seems to be, for which they are given, in verse 8. It really hammers home the purpose.
Exactly. They aren't status symbols or personal trophies. Verse 26 says they're for the benefit of the children of God. God's the giver, and the goal is to bless his family.
And the variety is amazing when you look at the examples the source pulls in from other scriptures.
It really is. You've got Solomon asking for wisdom. That's a gift, right? The ability to discern and lead.
Yeah, and Daniel interpreting dreams, understanding divine messages.
Then Peter healing the lame man, direct power to help someone physically.
Or Nephi and Lehi having that powerful revelatory experience in prison.
Mormon's calling as a prophet, the brother of Jared actually seeing the Lord.
Even Oliver Cowdery, in Doctrine and Covenants 6, being told the Lord knew his thoughts. That's a really personal kind of revelation, isn't it?
Absolutely. And Enoch speaking with such power that people, even cities, were affected. It shows the incredible range of how God empowers people.
It's like a divine toolkit, different tools for different jobs. And the cool thing is we're invited to figure out our own tools.
Yeah. The source mentions patriarchal blessings as one place to look for insights into our personal gifts.
And Elder Pingree's talk, I Have a Work for Thee, is mentioned too, encouraging us to see gifts maybe more broadly than just the spectacular ones. Maybe it's a quiet strength, a talent for listening or teaching.
That's such an important point, recognizing those quieter, maybe more consistent ways the Spirit works through us. And it connects to this idea of developing them.
Ah, Elder Villar's analogy.
Yeah, exercising our spiritual muscles. It suggests these gifts aren't static. We can work on them, strengthen them through use.
So it prompts a question for us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What exercises could we do to develop the gifts we have, or maybe the ones we hope to have?
It's empowering, that idea. We have a role to play in developing what God gives us.
Okay, that makes sense for section 46. Now, section 47, it feels like a bit of a shift in gears, focusing on keeping a history.
It might seem that way at first. It's the calling of John Whitmer as the church historian.
Right. And the source frames it as part of this long tradition of record keepers among God's people, not something totally new.
Exactly. Think of Nephi, Moses, Abraham. Record keeping seems to be consistently important to the Lord.
So why? Why the emphasis, especially when things were so new and maybe unstable?
Well, think about why we study history. It gives context, right? It helps us understand how things unfolded, what worked, what didn't. It shows patterns, maybe God's hand over time.
Okay, so it's about learning from the past, seeing the bigger story, not just isolated events.
Precisely. It builds faith by showing precedent, showing how others navigated challenges. And the source makes a nice connection here. It's not just about the church's history.
Ah, right. It nudges us to think about our personal history.
Yeah. What parts of our story, our experiences, our learnings might the Lord want us to remember, to record, maybe for ourselves, maybe for others down the line?
That's a perspective shift, recording our own journey. And there are tools now, like Family Search mentioned in the source, that make preserving memories easier than ever.
Mm-hmm. And Elder Ehring's talk, Oh, Remember, really dives into the spiritual power of consciously remembering God's goodness in our lives. It's an act of faith itself.
It really is. And thinking about John Whitmer specifically,
Yeah.
getting that calling amidst all the chaos of the early church, he might have felt a bit overwhelmed, maybe inadequate.
You'd think so. And the source points out we can probably all relate to that feeling when we get a new calling or responsibility that feels big.
Yeah. So the encouragement the Lord gives him in section 47, it can feel like encouragement for us too when we're stepping into something new.
Absolutely. It's a reminder to trust God and move forward. And it also touches on this idea that teaching or leading isn't just dumping information.
It's about building understanding, creating a legacy of knowledge. Like the history itself becomes a teaching tool.
Exactly. Which kind of flows into section 48, which deals with another very practical challenge.
The gathering in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
People arriving, needing places to stay, food, basic survival stuff.
Yeah, picture saints arriving from the east, maybe having sold everything, showing up in Kirtland needing help. It's a real community building moment.
And the Lord's direction is pretty straightforward, isn't it? Verses 2 and 3.
Very, basically. If you have extra, share it. Help those who don't have enough. Let everyone be provided for. It's about practical caring.
Putting faith into action, literally. Meeting those fundamental needs.
And the source asks us to reflect on that personally. What do we have that we can share? Maybe it's money, maybe it's time, a skill, maybe just listening.
It broadens the idea of resources, doesn't it? It's not just about cash.
Definitely not. And I like that they even mentioned the simple children's song, Give, said the little stream.
Huh, yeah. It's such a simple illustration of that principle. Just give what you have, cheerfully. Even small contributions matter.
It's about the spirit of generosity, the willingness to look out for each other.
Okay, so wrapping this up, let's just quickly recap the main threads we pulled.
Sounds good. We started with the absolute necessity of welcoming everyone, creating that foundation of community.
Then we dug into spiritual gifts, understanding they're real, they come from God, their purpose is to bless others, and we actually have a role in developing them.
Mm-hmm. Then the surprising but vital importance of keeping records, church history and personal history to learn, remember, and see God's hand.
And finally, that very practical commandment to share what we have, to support each other in tangible ways.
And it's striking how these instructions, given, almost 200 years ago in a very specific situation, still resonate so strongly. They feel like principles for us.
They really do. Which leads to maybe a final thought to chew on. Think about the connection between those two big themes. Seeking and using spiritual gifts on the one hand, and actively building a welcoming, sharing community on the other. How do those two things feed each other in your life?
That's interesting. Like, does being in a supportive community make it easier to recognize and use your gifts? Does using your gifts help build the community?
Exactly. How do they work together? It's something to consider. Which of these principles maybe feels most relevant or needed for you right now? What's one takeaway from these early saints that you could actually apply this week?
Good questions to ponder. It's all part of that ongoing learning process.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Hopefully it sparked some ideas and gave you some useful insights. Keep digging, keep learning.
When I feel the Spirit near, peace and love will whisper clear. God has gifts for even me, blessings given lovingly. Every good gift comes from above, sent with kindness, sent with love, to help, to heal, to lift, to guide, with Jesus always by my side. When I see a need or fear, I can serve and bring good cheer. With my hands or words or song, heaven helps me all day long. Every good gift comes from above, sent with kindness, sent with love, to help, to heal, to lift, to guide, with Jesus always by my side. Every good gift comes from above, sent with kindness, sent with love, to help, to heal, to lift, to guide, with Jesus always by my side. I will write the things I see, ways the Lord has strengthened me, sharing stories, faith and light, to help His work shine ever bright. Every good gift comes from above, given to share and show God's love. I'll seek, I'll serve, I'll live with grace, and build His Zion in this place. I will write the things I see, ways the Lord has strengthened me,